Hello and welcome to another bite-sized episode of the Do The Work podcast. I know your time is precious, so we keep these short and sharp so you can get the information that you need and go away and implement it into your lifestyle with your health and fitness. Just before we get into the episode, all I would say is if you like this content, if you could please share it with a friend, like it and subscribe so that we can get our message out to change more people's lives. Enjoy the episode. So in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 of the 10 top tips I have for dieting for weight loss. And we're going to cover the first 5 of these in this episode, and then in a further episode down the line, cover the next 5 after that. So we're going to get straight into it with tip number 1, which would be the thing that underpins everything surrounding weight loss, which is the calorie deficit, which you've probably heard hundreds of times before. However, it's at number 1 because it is the most important thing, and without it, you can't achieve weight loss. Now, I've talked in a previous episode about setting a specific target when it comes to whether it's exercise, diet, or whatever it might be, and we need to be super specific with our calorie target for this as well. You can use many different tracking sort of devices or apps or whatever to monitor this. So like MyFitnessPal, for example, which we're going to circle back to in a later tip, would be a good one for being able to choose and then track all of your calories. Now, this is something that I recommend that you, once you choose it, you stick to it for an extended period of time, that being 2, 3, 4 weeks, before making any further changes and deciding that the calorie deficit doesn't work for you. Because like with anything in life, we need consistency and we need a lot of data to know if something is working. And so I recommend that you keep it the same as what you set as your target, and then continue the work that you've been doing towards that for a period of time. Notice if there are any changes before making a change after a few days if you don't see anything on the scales. Now, tip number 2 would be kind of like off the back of setting the calorie target goal. And although very important, it comes in at number 2 on the list because the calorie target is the most important thing. But the next most important thing that I believe when it comes to weight loss is setting a protein goal. Now, most people don't get enough protein within their diets, usually due to the convenience foods that they choose, whether that be for when they're out for lunch or breakfast, and they just struggle to get to the amount that they should be aiming for. Now, a protein target that I usually recommend and set for clients is usually between 1 to 2 grams per kilo of body weight. So to make this easy maths, if someone weighs 100 kilos, I'll typically start them at around 100 grams of protein per day. But anywhere up to 200 grams per day would be absolutely fine. Now, what you will find when you increase your protein intake is, yes, you're also going to be recovering and encouraging potentially that little bit of muscle growth, but you're also going to increase your satiety, so you're going to feel fuller for longer and then probably crave less of the stuff that you're trying to have less of, like the chocolate and the biscuits and the snacks and things like that. Therefore, it's kind of like a double benefit in terms of it helping you with both of them things. Again, what I would recommend that you do is track this within the app that you use, for example, MyFitnessPal, and work towards that. And what you will find is that when you have managed to fit in that amount of protein, there is not that much room left for the kind of snacky-based things that maybe your diet was full of before. And so we start thinking about actually what do we need to fit into the diet rather than what we don't get to have because we're dieting. And then from there, number 3 would be to plan the week on the Friday before. This is another tip that I recommend to all of my clients, whether their goal is weight loss, weight maintenance, they're looking to gain some muscle. Having a plan is one of the most important things, which is why it comes in at number 3 on this list. And so what that starts with is not necessarily just freely going shopping and hoping for the best, but making a set meal plan, or at least having a rough idea of the meals that you want to have for, say, breakfast, lunch and tea, or breakfast, lunch and dinner, or whatever you want to call it, for the following week. And then from there, we almost reverse engineer what that shopping list is. And then when we go and do our shopping, we've got a little bit of a plan, we've got a little bit of a structure, and that gives us a bit of an idea of what to get, rather than just going into the supermarket, kind of winging it and just getting whatever we fancy at the time. And another tip that comes off the back of this is that I recommend, this is number 4 by the way, that you track everything in MyFitnessPal, but you input it at least the night before. And if you wanted to be super organized, you could even input it when you've planned the week, if you are someone who is quite ahead of the game with regards to your planning. And the reason that I suggest that you put it in before is because that's you making a commitment towards what you've said that you were going to do. And therefore, when you then come to have a look at the app the next day, you'll see you've already made that mental and sort of physical, in that it's in the app, commitment to that meal or that day or whatever that might be. And you are then much less likely to deviate from the plan because you've made a commitment. And it's not just in your head, but it's in the app. So you don't necessarily have to put the entire week in, let's say, on the Friday when you plan it. But I do recommend that you put your meals in for the following day, the night before. And that will just increase the likelihood of you actually sticking to what you've set out, rather than getting to the day and then thinking, well, I'll get it sorted for the next meal or what have you, which I'm sure we've all said countless times before. And then the final tip here would be to reduce as much as possible drinking calories. And when I'm talking about this, I'm referencing alcohol, I'm referencing like fizzy drinks like, Coke or Fanta or whatever. And in the instances where you might want those, just simply swap them for diet options. So you could swap a full fat Coke for a Coke Zero. And there's lots of other zero options out there now, like the Fanta and 7-Up and Sprite and what have you. And that's going to satisfy that craving for that fizzy drink, that's something else other than water, but not break the calorie bank. You're going to be, as in the name, you're going to be having 0 calories. And for me, it just seems like a no-brainer, because some people might be, sitting down at night and having like 2 glasses of wine, which might be like 300 to 500 calories, and, have the rest of the day in a good place with regards to the food, but then not understand why they're not seeing the progress on the scales. And often it's because they are drinking calories, essentially. We could look into this a little bit further. We have to think about things like the sauces and the oils that we cook with and the sauces that we add onto our foods. Also what we're putting in teas and coffees and all these things. Now, some of these have, slightly bigger calorie differences than others. Like a teaspoon of sugar in a coffee isn't going to do much, but a whole lot of mayo sprayed all over your evening meal could make quite a dent into your calories and the calorie target that you're working towards. So yeah, for me, I would make sure that we're opting for, if we can, water. We can minimize your coffees down to, black coffee, if it's just tea, just a little bit of milk, or coffee and a little bit of milk, rather than opting for these options that are just full of milk and calories and syrups and all the rest of the stuff. And then with regards to the fizzy drinks, just opt for the 0 options. And again, it comes back to the alcohol. This is a topic that most people kind of, don't like to hear about, and they don't want to reduce it. But ultimately, if you're having a glass of wine a night or a few glasses of wine a week, you really could take off around maybe even anywhere up to 1,000 or more calories per week. And that's going to make a big contribution towards you being a calorie deficit and you losing weight. So to summarize back through your first 5 tips, tip number 1 would be to set a calorie target, and to add to that, to stick to that to a period of 2 to 4 weeks, and weigh yourself regularly to monitor that progress before you make any changes. Tip number 2 will be to set a protein target and set it 1 to 2 grams per kilo of your body weight. If you're someone who's carrying quite a lot of body fat, I should have added this before, you might set your target more towards that 1 gram, and if you're someone who's relatively lean, you might be closer to the 2 grams per kilo of body weight. Tip number 3 will be to plan the week on the Friday before, plan the meals that you'd like to have, then do the shopping, and then start thinking about logging that within MyFitnessPal. And a real good tool that some people use is simply get some form of plan put up on your fridge or whatever in the kitchen, and again, you've got that commitment to the day as to when you're going to have that meal, and you're less likely then again to deviate from that. And then that leads me on to tip number 4, to track everything in MyFitnessPal and make sure you're at least putting it in the day before, so that you're making that mental and physical commitment to the meal that you said you would have, making it less likely that you're going to deviate from that. And then to circle back to tip number 5 to finish it off, try and reduce the amount of calories that you're drinking through alcohol, fizzy drinks, coffees, and anything else. And also consider sauces and oils that you cook with. If you do those first 5 things, I guarantee you're going to be making a hell of a lot of progress towards your goals. I have got 5 more tips for you, which I'm going to cover in a later episode. Hopefully you've found those 5 tips useful, and as I say, I'll be back with another episode very soon. Thanks for tuning in for today's episode. I hope you found it useful, and if you did, you've got the power to share this message as well. So if you have a friend who might find this content useful, please share it with them, and we'll see you on the next episode.